Hello, my name is Ian Hawkins. You are listening to The Y Word, the podcast that gets under the skin of artists, creatives, thinkers, business people, CEOs, basically anyone who makes a difference in the world, and tries to find out why they do what they do. Coming up in today's show, you're going to hear this.
If someone needs to have their nose made smaller or anything to make themselves feel more comfortable and to be able to exist in the world in which they live, I'm in no position to either judge them for it or indeed take that away from them. To get more disabled people on TV, we need to put more disabled people on TV and stop describing disabled talent as a risk. I'm not a risk, I'm an asset. I'm the best thing in the room right now. I don't think people are generally rude or ignorant when it comes to disability. I just think they don't know. Like 9 out of 10 people in the UK haven't had a disabled person in their house. So how can I best normalise disability for people and make them more comfortable around it? Yelling at them on Twitter certainly isn't going to help.
Adam Pearson is a presenter, actor and campaigner, the self-described poster boy for UK charities Changing Faces and Genes for Genes. Adam has appeared alongside Scarlett Johanssen in the sci-fi horror film Under the Skin, and is casting researcher on the Channel 4 show The Undateables. Adam's condition, neurofibromatosis, causes non-cancerous tumours to grow on nerve tissue, resulting in facial disfigurement, in sharp contrast to most of the faces we're used to seeing in the media. Adam, welcome to The Y Word.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's delightful to have you, because I was trying to work out how to introduce you in a non-visual format that was sensitive and accurate. So by all means, give me marks out of 10.
You crushed it. Props on the correct pronunciation of neurofibromatosis. That word tends to strike fear into the hearts of many a presenter.
Only you and I need know that it was 17 takes before I got there. So you started off really, I think I saw you in a documentary about cosmetic surgery. How was that received?
Those kind of documentaries are normally received quite well. It was at the Channel 4 Beauty and the Beast, the Ugly Face of Prejudice. And I think with most things, you need to come at it from a place of compassion and understanding, and try not to demonize things. You need to give subject matters all the room they need to breathe and ask the right questions to the right people and kind of create that tone. You want to engage with people rather than judge people. And it did well. I was really happy with it. It was a good jumping off point.
And how was it received in the press?
The press really liked it. But then within the facial disfigurement community, there was a little bit of people on both sides, which is good. I think as a journalist and a documentary maker, if you're pleasing everyone all the time, you're not doing your job properly. It created conversation. I'll still to this day vehemently defend every decision that was made on that program. A good documentary should be polarizing. Certainly walk a line of almost tension. Difficult subject matter should make everyone feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about cosmetic surgery and people that want a slightly smaller nose and to get their ears fixed. How does that sit along somebody with your condition?
Well, I've had a lot of surgery for very different reasons, for medical reasons. I think I'm up to 38, 39 procedures now. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten wiser. On one hand, it's an industry that could be seen to be profiteering off of people's insecurities and what is mainly women's insecurities, but the male numbers are very, very quickly catching up. But then by the same token, if someone needs to have their nose made smaller or anything to make themselves feel more comfortable and to be able to exist in the world in which they live, I'm in no position to either judge them for it or indeed take that away from them.
It's interesting, Adam. I was going through your CV and trying to find the things you've done. I think you've had a real impact, because I immediately, when I see you on telly, which is every so often and not often enough, but I always think, one, I'm in very safe hands with this person. And the stuff you do does have this, this big impact, this emotional heft to it. Do you think there's been a lasting impact to the show?
Well, you always want your work to leave some kind of legacy. And I don't want to see live stuff rerun over and over and over. I don't think that's what I'm going for. Good documentary changes what people think. Great documentary will change how people think. And I'm always a fan of great documentary, and which is why I try and keep it kind of few and far between. If you're always doing it, it starts to lose its gravitas and its impact. Because if you kind of pick and choose your subject matters really carefully and go for the big thing, unless it makes the commissioner nervous, it's probably not worth doing it.
That echoes something that one of my previous guests said about where you are doing well when somebody really doesn't want you to do it. I wonder though, are you really the best person to decide what the impact is? Because kind of you're in the middle and you're inside it. You don't know what impact it's had out on the rest of the world. Do you think what difference do you think you've made?
I think that's the real beauty of it, is that I'll never truly know the full impact of what it's had. Of course, you get a little glimpse and a small echo of it, I suppose, and people kind of tweet you or come up to you and write you letters saying, "Oh, I really liked your work, your program or podcast, therefore, or film really helped me get through it. So thank you." You only roughly hear about 5% max of that in person, and the rest of it just plays itself out in the universe, which I think is like a really, really beautiful and humbling thing. Because if you heard all of it, just imagine the level of ego that would create. I'm quite braggadocious anyway. I reckon that would be a really dangerous thing for me to know and hear.
Oh, I need my ego boosting all the time. So if by all means, leave comments, positive ones and 5-star reviews on this. I mean, I rather cheekily suggested to you, actually it's not cheeky because I did mean it. I said to you, when we were setting up this interview, I said what you really needed was a nice daytime quiz show format that you could do. Isn't there a part of you that does want to do something that's, a bit of forgettable, fun, throwaway telly just because you're a good presenter?
Absolutely. And I have these conversations a lot in interviews like this and also with the channels. Diversity works when you have disabled talent doing things that aren't just about disability. That's why I was so happy when I got the Channel 4 Tricks of the Restaurant Trade gig. It's me talking about food and business and kind of a bit of economics. So my disability has absolutely nothing to do with the reason I'm in that program. I got the gig because I'm a good presenter and people like me, I hope.
And you've kind of hit the nail on the head there about doing something that is not about disability. But do you think we're kind of in the same position that the black presenters would have been 20 or 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Are you only on the list for the disabled issues? And do you think that's going to change?
I think we are about 20 years behind our BAME counterparts in terms of how progressive we're being. And I don't necessarily think that's because it's like deliberate ill intention. I just think it's because there's no disabled people behind the scenes calling it or making any of the big decisions that need to be made. And we do need more incidental disability on the telly. Disabled people, as you say, doing the fun daytime formats, just to, I suppose, normalise it and level the playing field. And they're out there. You can't tell me there's not a disabled antiques expert that will just completely slay Bargain Hunt or Flog It or something like that. Or just a disabled presenter that would, as you say, do a quiz show really well. I think Warwick Davis on Tenable is incredible.
It's that thing of being almost forgettable in a way, doing forgettable telly. So that you're not going, there's that disabled person, in the way that we now don't go, there's that Asian presenter presenting that thing. It's a bit of a sea change that people have to go through. Yeah,
and you've got to get people there slowly but surely. You've got to win them over. And it's all about getting disabled talent on screen and then letting their talent do the talking. And that's another weird thing with kind of advocacy and diversity, is that when we eventually get there, being really good at my job will eventually cost me my job as an advocate. Because the day I've done my job is the day my job's no longer needed.
But you'll have more presenting gigs lined up, so that will all be okay.
I'll have more time to do actual kind of telly and radio stuff.
What do you think we need to do to get to that possibility, that future?
It's a really straightforward answer, and I wish I could put it more academically or verbosely. But to get more disabled people on TV, we need to put more disabled people on TV and stop describing disabled talent as a risk. I'm not a risk, I'm an asset. I'm the best thing in the room right now.
Yeah, but how do we encourage people to make that jump? Because that is a jump. That is a change you have to get people to make. I think people are very uncomfortable about making changes within themselves.
I don't know how we get there without making it sound very militaristic by putting targets in. And I think there's definitely a time and a place for targets. But then that may come over as tokenistic. And then you get people saying, oh, he's only there because he's disabled and so on. And so I really don't have a straightforward answer for that one. I think we need to get disabled talent in front of commissioners and put disability on the table when we talk about diversity. Because either it all matters or none of it matters. We can't create this grey area of being diverse-ish. That's not an option that's available right now.
So in a sense, do you think things are getting less woke?
When it comes to disability, absolutely. Like clipping up is like an easy way to get an Oscar for a lot of people, even when it's done really badly. Like Gary Oldman in Tiptoe is just a diabolical film where he plays like a little person. Even the trailer is like overly worthy and a bit wanky with a voiceover describing it as the performance of a lifetime. Like, whose lifetime?
So what do you think is more powerful at changing minds? Is it documentary or is it drama?
I think they're both good for their own different reasons. For example, if we look at drama and Peter Dinklage in Game of Thrones, that's done wonders for him and his career, and he's now in that place where he's just Peter Dinklage, and he's getting work because he's a really good actor. But then I think a documentary can be a lot more immersive and has a lot more of that reality edge to it that something like certainly Game of Thrones absolutely wouldn't. And with documentary, you're watching a real person bare their soul and wrestle with difficult issues in a way that's accessible. You've got enough proximity to buy in and go on the journey with them. But you're far enough away where if it does feel uncomfortable, the audience can put their soul on ice for a little while and then come back to it when they're ready.
The Peter Dinklage role in Game of Thrones is amazing because it's such a strange and dangerous world. And it's so frightening for the viewer that you need someone to hold your hand and take you into it. And that character is Peter Dinklage because he's an outcast in that world. And so are we. He's our gateway in.
He's a safety net, isn't he? He's like a comfort blanket. And he's a great actor. I think I quoted him in a keynote speech I did about a year ago on identity, because he's got that cracking quote in the first episode: never forget who you are, because surely the world will not. Wield it like a weapon and you can achieve great things. Wear it like armor and it will never be used to hurt you.
Yeah, my Peter Dinklage line I like is I don't like the word luck because it covers up a lot of hard work.
I can get behind that.
It's not bad. We can put it on a T-shirt. We can put it on a motivational poster somewhere. Adam, you've worked alongside Scarlett Johanssen. Apart from being a very upsetting film indeed, what do you think the inclusion of your character was trying to achieve?
With my actual casting, the director was really adamant that he wanted someone who actually had a disfigurement and didn't want to use prosthetics or cheat it or take any shortcuts, which I think is a really bold move that I wish more directors would put their balls on the chopping block and make. I think it's about what the world looks like without knowledge and therefore without prejudice. If you came into this world knowing nothing, how would you interact and kind of navigate that world? And where do those emotions such as kind of pity, empathy, revulsion come from?
It was very upsetting, that whole film. And I found myself in the weird position of genuinely worrying about all the men that Scarlett Johansson lured into her, whatever that was. You must have been showering for weeks after that. What was that made of?
It's like a molasses tar-like substance. And, it does stick to you. That was a really, really fun scene to shoot. The black and white stuff was 2 days in Elstree. And then I was up in Glasgow for a couple of weeks doing the on-location stuff. Whereas when you go from doing like a supporting role to, I did a leading role in another film, 3 years ago? The jump from supporting to leading is mental. Yeah, it gave me a whole new respect for how hard it is.
Great to get these little insights of what it's like on the set of these big films. Now, growing up, I always quite fancied the idea of myself being an actor or maybe a presenter, but I was put off the idea by well-meaning adults who said that's no job for a smart person like you. And I think that was a kind way of saying you have to be really good looking if you want to make it in television. So I thought I'd take those criticisms, which I certainly internalised and they shaped my career, and I thought I'd play them back to Adam to see what he thought and why he had chosen the career path that he had. You're a presenter and an actor, which are jobs which you'd think as you go into them, you think you kind of have to get by on your looks. Did you choose these jobs, or did they, in a sense, choose you?
A lot of them choose me. With the recent one I did, Change for Life, it's because he saw me in Under the Skin. He'd written about 20 pages of the script, and with the character, he had an idea that, okay, it's a guy with neurofibromatosis, and then got in touch with Andrew, my agent, and we had a lot of Skype chats and what have you. I'm a big fan of saying yes to things. If something makes me nervous, it's probably a sign that it's a good idea.
Do you like feeling nervous and feeling the fear of doing it anyway?
I love feeling nervous. I think if you feel safe doing something, whilst I think there's an absolute time and a place for kind of comfort and what have you, every now and then you should do something that just scares the pants off you, because it's probably going to move things forward in one way or another. And also just because it's fun. No one goes skydiving because it's the logical thing to do in that moment, right?
Have you been able to do anything frightening in lockdown, or has it been a sort of a feeling of limbo for you?
Well, lockdown in and of itself has been quite frightening. Anytime you open your Twitter feed or turn on the news, you're on like that knife edge of, why does the world hate each other? Legally, but I've had time to do a few bits and pieces, and I think self-reflection has been a lot of my lockdown coping mechanism. Just taking a step back and looking at the world around me and my current friendships, relationships, and working out what ones are good and do I want to keep around, who am I missing, what am I missing, who aren't I missing, what aren't I missing, and how, when we come out of lockdown, how I guess I can be a better person and make the world a better place. Because I think lockdown should, in theory, make us all a lot more empathetic than we were going in. Whether that will play out in the real world or not remains to be seen.
Do you think we've really made ourselves more empathetic? It's not something I see particularly on Twitter at the moment.
No. I think Twitter's quite tribal anyway. And then when you add the fact a lot of the conversation is politics into the mix, it becomes even more tribal still. People say things online they would never say in real life. Like when I was a kid, if you wanted to be mean to someone, you'd have to go up to them, look them in the eye, say what you had to say, and watch their soul die right in front of you. And you'd have the decency to be like, oh, that feels really bad. I'm not going to do that again. Whereas online, you can be anonymous, do the exact same thing, and our relationship with our actions has changed with the advent of social media. You don't see the impact of it anymore. You just send it and carry on with your day.
But I've seen so many accounts on Twitter which are fairly anonymous. They don't have proper names on the thing. They don't have a proper, face pic. You and I both have our faces in the little circle, and they'll say the most awful things. You go, you probably have a family that doesn't know you say these things. You probably have children who don't know you say these things. And if you had to put your face to it, people around you would be appalled. You'd never say these things if you were not anonymous.
Anonymity creates this real fake sense of bravado, and this idea that the internet is a no-holds-barred environment is ludicrous. And people talk about things like free speech. But just because you can do something, it doesn't mean you should. And eventually, kind of common sense and human decency should take over. They might even have really valid points and just express them in a really horrible way. I don't get it. I don't get why people feel the need to act in abhorrent ways and then use their supposed freedom as an excuse for it. There's nothing in the law that says I can't go into my shed right now and eat my lawnmower. I've got the freedom to do that. It's just a stupid thing to do, right?
Sure. But you raise a really important question, and that is about the nature of anonymity. Now, you cannot be anonymous, Adam. I mean, I would have thought the temptation to have a fake account and say terrible things must actually be quite high. You're instantly recognizable. So what's your relationship with anonymity?
I would be the worst criminal ever, wouldn't I? I'd rock up, rob a bank, the police get there. First question, what did he look like? Well, no dodging that one, is there? Could I rob a bank and get away with it? Let's find out. Roll credits. I don't like the idea of being anonymous, because anonymous means you aren't recognized, and that's only a few steps away from being unnoticed. And who wants to be unnoticed? That's why people go online and say horrible things in the first place. Why blend in when you were born to stand out would be my ethos. People are going to notice what I do no matter what I do. So let's at least make it worth the price of admission.
I quite like living in London. I quite like the anonymity of it, of just being able to disappear into the crowd. And I think it goes back to what I was saying about being able to make forgettable telly. You're a campaigner. Do you think there's something in, is it better to be ridiculous words like brave, disabled heroes, all that kind of thing? That's got to be better than just being ignored altogether, hasn't it?
It does. And the words like inspiration and hero are real bones of contention within the disabled community. Why do you think I'm a hero? If you think I'm a hero because I'm the best in the world at what I do, then crack on. But if you think I'm a hero because you'd hate to live my life and I'm just good for not jumping off the nearest bridge, then that's a really bad attitude to have about disability. And that absolutely needs to be discussed. I'm not saying you're ableist or it's a hate crime or what have you. But I think it's really important we know where that attitude comes from and how we can best address that. I don't think people are generally rude or ignorant when it comes to disability. I just think they don't know. Like 9 out of 10 people in the UK haven't had a disabled person in their house. So how can I best normalise disability for people and make them more comfortable around it? Yelling at them on Twitter certainly isn't going to help.
No, but putting it on television maybe is, because when it's on television, it's something we see, something we get used to, and something that we learn a lot about people through,
Yeah,
through
totally. If they can see like a disabled guy on the telly, just, as you say, like hosting a quiz show, or as like a regular panelist on 8 out of 10 Characters Countdown, or something like that. Again, the more normal to their mind it becomes, and it just becomes part of their day-to-day and part of their psyche, that's how society is built.
True, because I think there's a danger we always end up talking about the disability rather than the person. And I'm aware that I might be slightly guilty of that in this interview. How much do you feel that your condition is part of you, and how much do you feel it's separate from you?
Really good question. Because again, people talk about disability in terms of the medical model and the social model. Well, I think my disability is quite an important part of me because it shaped my life and made me who I am. So I can't kind of completely shun it. And also because it's a genetic condition. So on a purely scientific level, it's woven into my DNA. It's a huge part of me. But then by the same token, I still probably have the same interests and same passions that I do outside of campaigning, obviously. If I didn't have it, I'd still be like a gamer. I'd still play Magic the Gathering semi-pro. I'd still like rock and metal music. I'd still be like a beer and a rum drinker. And so that there are facets of it that are instrumental to my life, and there are facets of it that aren't. But no, it's run through my life, and it's had an impact on it. It's changed it to my mind, for the better, because if I didn't have my condition, I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I have done. Also, I can't change it, right? I can sit around and hug the dog and listen to REM, Everybody Hurts on repeat all day long, but it isn't going. All that's going to do is irritate the life out of the dog. And so you become the master of your own destiny at that point. Look at the situation and be like, here is what is going on. Here's where I have control. Here is where I don't. Or part where I don't have control. And these things I do have control over. Let's go out and let's nail it.
If you couldn't campaign about disability and facial disfigurement, what would you campaign for?
I don't know, because I think the things that we campaign for are directly related to our life circumstances, aren't they?
Sure.
And a really good friend of mine once said that if you want to know what you care about, ask yourself what pisses you off. And if you can find your misery, therein you find your ministry. And so I don't know, because when I find it quite somewhat disingenuous when non-disabled people or people who aren't kind of disability adjacent campaign about it. Like, parents of disabled children rock on. Like, campaign all day, we're very much reading for the same hymn book. I suppose it would be like me campaigning about racism, wouldn't it? It'd just be a bit weird. No matter how well meant it is and how sincere it is, if I go on the telly and say Black Lives Matter, it's going to kick off online, isn't it?
But you've got to be an ally. I think that's the cool saying now, because I'm an ally. What does that mean? Well, I don't really know, but I'm an ally.
I don't really know, but I agree with the message of Black Lives Matter. But also, I acknowledge that as a white man, now is not my time to talk.
And is that what you think we could all do more of? Shut up and listen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you want to learn about disability, and find a disabled person and ask them questions and just sit under the learning tree and take it in. I deliberately hang out with people who, I vehemently disagree with on a lot of things, and I ask them questions. And I also hang out with people who aren't like me and get to know them. And that kind of knowledge you can mainly learn through osmosis. You can normally just go down the pub with people who you don't know that well and just kind of get to know them and learn how their world works.
One of my previous guests on here has said she doesn't think anybody's going to come out of COVID untouched by some form of mental illness or trauma or something.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going to be like a weird form of PTSD, isn't it? Where we've gone from kind of normality to lockdown and then straight back into normality. It's going to be a real shock to everyone's system.
Yeah, we're all sitting at home desperate to get out, and as soon as we get out we go, actually this is frightening. I haven't talked to people for months and it's strange. Adam, I'm going to wrap this up by asking you the question I ask everybody, which is you can go for a business lunch with anybody you like. Living, dead, fictional, historical, anybody in the whole span of human history and imagination. Who would you like to have a business lunch with?
Oh, I should have really prepared for this question. Because do I do it to kind of further my own career and get in front of someone like a Ryan Murphy who does really good diverse casting for things like Glee and American Horror Story? Do I just go and meet one of my heroes and chill out with The Rock? Because you could sit down with Hitler and just tell him how to do his art a bit better, and then that would have solved a massive problem. No, screw it, The Rock. I'm meeting The Rock.
It's good. We went from Hitler to The Rock. And you've chosen correctly, I have to say.
I have. I don't know Austrian, so I don't know how I'd communicate with the other guy.
Adam Pearson, thank you for your time today. Thank you for appearing on The Y Word.
Anytime.
Great. We might have you back next time you're in a big movie. What can I say, dear listener? Watch this space. Thanks to Adam Pearson for being a brilliant guest. If there's one thing I love, it's being able to see the world through different eyes, and Adam absolutely brought that in spades. So thank you so much to Adam, and thank you to you, dear listener, for your time, your attention, joining us on The Y Word today. If you'd like to make any comments on the show, please do find me on LinkedIn. That's where I love to communicate with people. And if you have anybody in mind for a guest on an upcoming show, someone that's changed the world in some way, could be big, could be small, could be kind of random, by all means, do put us in touch with one another and we'll see where we go. If you haven't already, do check out the archive. We've had some fantastic guests. Hit that subscribe button. My name's Ian Hawkins. Have a great time. Till the next time.